Good afternoon, staters and guests. Welcome to the 2015 Kansas Boys State Debate. I'm Brock Jameson. I'm from Pittsburg, Kansas, and I go to St. Mary's Colgan High School in Pittsburg, Kansas. I've been simulated into Pershing County in the city of Raymond. According to the newscast, I'm the primary news anchor for the Kansas Boys State News broadcast, and I have been appointed the master of ceremonies for this debate. I apologize for my hoarse voice. As you can tell, I've been trying my absolute hardest to represent Pershing County well in the marches. Today, not only do we have debates between two candidates from two separate political parties, but we also have a battle between two different philosophies of government. The first party, the Nationalist Party, believes in firm roots of liberalism and strong government influence, while the other party, the Federalist Party, believes in firm roots of conservatism and minimal government influence. We have one candidate representing each position in their representative party. The 6 positions being represented tonight are Secretary of State, Commissioner of Insurance, Treasurer, Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, and last but obviously not the least, Governor. The Federalist candidate for Secretary of State is Jacob Schlittenhart with 48.54% of the votes. The Nationalist candidate for Secretary of State is Matthew Wagner with 36.62%. The Federalist candidate for Commissioner of Insurance is Joshua Schwartz, receiving 100% of the votes from the Federalist Party. The Nationalist candidate for Commissioner of Insurance is Luke Lazensky, receiving 46.89% of the votes. The Federalist candidate for State Treasurer is Rob Nickel, it's all in the name, with 57.77% of the votes. The Nationalist candidate for State Treasurer is Yifeng Dean, my roommate, with 41.43% of the votes. The Federalist candidate for Attorney General is Jordan Humphrey, with 55.12% of the votes. The Nationalist candidate for Attorney General is Lucas Liu, with 41.43% of the votes. The lieutenant governors were chosen by the governor candidates for their respective parties. The Federalist candidate for lieutenant governor is Nathaniel Striffler. And the Nationalist candidate for lieutenant governor is Daniel Lewis. Now for our governors. The Federalist candidate for governor is Bryce Johnston. The Nationalist candidate for governor is Alexander Trobaugh. Candidates, please be seated. These candidates are going to duke it out right here on this stage in a debate where a candidate will be asked a question and the opposing candidate will have the chance to rebuttal. The exact format of the debate will pertain as follows. Each candidate, except for the governor, gets 1 question, a total of 10 questions. Each candidate is allowed 1.5 minutes to answer the question. Each opposing candidate is allowed 1 minute for response. 30 seconds for rebuttal are given to the candidate who initially answered the question. Determining who gets the first question alternates between parties. Each governor candidate gets 2 questions, a total of 4. Each governor candidate is allowed 1.5 minutes to answer the question. Each opposing governor candidate is allowed 1 minute for response. 30 seconds for rebuttal are given to the candidate who initially answered the question, and determining who gets the first question alternates between parties, just like the previous format. The panel here consists of voice staters of the media program. Ladies and mostly gentlemen, any previous candidate's voice stater will tell you that the debate is the most crucial and/or controversial event of the whole state conference. Gentlemen, don't think that this is a chance to catch up on your sleeping schedule, because it's not. Please make sure to pay attention, for this debate will give you the greatest opportunity to secure your assurance on your own vote. The debate will be starting soon, so please pop your popcorn and enjoy the show.
Testing. Oh, there we go. All right, our first question will be for the Secretary of State, and we're going to start with the Nationalist Party. And your question is, I'll wait for you to get up there first. Your question is, if the minimum wage is raised, how would you help small businesses adjust to the rising cost of employees?
Okay, so in terms of that question, what we were trying to do, many of you have heard that we're raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, but recently we reorganized our platform and agreed that a number around $12.50 is more appropriate. And then it's a question in regards of small businesses, because when talking about the minimum wage raising, people often think, well, maybe small businesses can't make up for the differences. That's not true. Many studies have been produced in the past couple of years talking about minimum wage, saying that small businesses can afford to spend more money on labor force. So you have these small businesses in Kansas who, what happens is you have, let me think. Okay, so you have people who are getting paid extremely low wages. And what is said is, these small businesses don't have enough profit margins. They don't have enough resources to pay for raising employees. In fact, as I said, that's not true. The resources are there, and simply put, there's no way we cannot have the federal minimum wage not be raised. What happens is the federal minimum wage, last time it was raised was in 2009. And since then, inflation has occurred. Around the board, prices have increased 20%. So the people who are being paid less but paying more for products. So by increasing the minimum wage, people can therefore counter the inflation going on and pay for these products better. And thus, the small business is thus being allowed to pay for these employees.
Well, first of all, the small businesses might have the resources to pay if we raise the minimum wage, but the problem is going to be that they still want profits, and profits are what's going to make their business expand. It's going to create new jobs. And if we raise the minimum wage, they're going to either cut employees or they're going to cut employee hours, which actually ends up helping nobody because they want to keep their same profits coming. Now, due to inflation, we may need to raise the minimum wage a little bit. $8 is probably the maximum amount that we need to raise the minimum wage. Raising it to $12.50 is going to have all of the other products skyrocket. Every time you raise the minimum wage, the prices on groceries, gas, everything else jumps to help reflect that new cost of paying the employees more. So if we raise the minimum wage, it's actually not going to benefit the small businesses or anyone else. Thank you.
I respectfully disagree with the candidate, Jacob. 60% of small business owners in Kansas approve of raising the minimum wage to at least $10.10. Simply put, his justification behind raising to $8, which is only 75 cents more than it is now, currently cannot sustain the status quo. The minimum wage needs to be raised, and small business owners understand that, because if employees are being paid more, then they can put that money back into the economy, have a higher standard of living, and be able to purchase products much easier.
next question is for the Federalists. The question is, labor unions support the rights of workers but can make the governmental process more complicated. Do you plan to work with and or support labor unions? Why or why not?
Well, you're asking if we support labor unions, and obviously we're going to help support the labor unions. We do respect the labor force's rights. We know that the labor force is what drives our economy forward. That is the essence of the entire economy. Without the labor, obviously we get no progress. So yes, we want to look out for the rights of the labor force, but back to the problem of minimum wage, if we raise that, then that's going to end up cutting down on the labor force because people are going to end up being fired. We want to make sure that we're doing what's best for the labor force. For the labor force, we want to make sure that we're protecting their rights, that we're protecting their safety, and making them a top priority, because they're definitely the ones that are helping to sustain our economy. We want to make sure that their income taxes are low so that they can keep as much profit as they can in their pockets. We want to make sure that they are getting what they want. We're going to try to work with them in finding out what they need, what they think is a good idea, and definitely examine those. The labor unions are working together. They're going to be beneficial if they will allow us to work together with them to just help protect what they need. So if you are with the labor unions, we would love to help you out. I'm Jacob Schlittenhart for Secretary of State. I would love your votes. Thank you, guys.
So the labor unions, they need higher wages. Simply put, giving them a raise of $8 an hour is not adequately justify the needs that they have. I've talked extensively with the Industrial Workers Political Action Committee, and they tell me that what they want most exclusively is higher wages. That's what the Nationalist Party stands for, is higher wages. So we also support the labor unions. We want to work with them, give them higher wages, as well as with our tax policies. All of our taxes are going to, and then run benefit them because it works more towards helping the middle class and the lower class people as opposed to giving tax breaks to big businesses. Which, of course, in big businesses, when you give them tax breaks, the labor unions don't benefit as much. It's really just the people in charge. So what we want to do is we want to go after the labor unions. We want to help them out. We want to give them access to higher wages because minimum wage will raise their wages as well. And just work with them and figure out what they want and justify and fulfill their needs, if you will. Thank you.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but Marshall County, Patton County, a lot of the other counties, especially the ones in the oil industry, most of their labor force is actually out of work right now. Which means that raising the minimum wage is not going to help anyone because they're not even being paid anything. So what we propose is to help these counties get jobs, building oil refineries, get the labor force back working first, so that then they can keep the money in the pockets that they're earning. Thank you.
These questions are directed towards the Commissioners of Insurance. First up, the Federalist Commissioner of Insurance. The Affordable Care Act has had many changes to the national insurance system. If given the opportunity, would you implement a statewide healthcare system similar to the one established by the Affordable Care Act? Why or why not?
Okay, so socialized healthcare is a wonderful thing. It's very helpful, but what we don't need is the federal government ramming it down our throats, telling us exactly what to do on a nationwide basis, because what's best is on a state-by-state basis, not just like one blanket thing for the entire country. So what we would do is actually, Dr. Ben Carson proposed this plan where it's basically kind of a social security type system, where you pay into the system over your lifetime, and also rich people and charities can pay into the system to help out poorer people. And this teaches personal responsibility. You can get the money when you need it. It's there when you need it. You can withdraw it when you need it. And also, I support, as insurance commissioner, I support the health insurance especially, becoming non-for-profit corporations because like what they need to focus on is helping people, contributing to the greater good. They don't need to be driven by corporate greed. That's not what we need in our health insurance system. Health insurance should help people. It should not be driven by profits. Thank you.
What the other candidate just said is completely illogical. First of all, the Social Security thing he described is not insurance. Furthermore, I'm going to say that having a universal health care for the state of Kansas would actually be beneficial. A Harvard study found that a state implementing a universal health care system within 10 years would save them over $300 billion. That's just not economically sane, that's also emotionally sane, because we're providing for the lower class, we're providing for the minorities, we're providing for the people who can't provide for themselves. Just because someone's poor doesn't mean they're entitled to the same, just because someone's poor, that does not mean that they're not entitled to the same amount of care. Someone should be able to have cancer treatment no matter their status in life or where they're born. For all this in mind, I completely stand for a universal health care just to provide for everybody. Thank you.
You used an interesting word there, entitlement. I think that's a big problem in the welfare system today. Like, these people receiving welfare feel that they have entitlement to this welfare they're receiving. Welfare should be a social safety net. It's not like something that you just live off of. So this plan, we know it's not insurance, it's supplemented with the insurance system, and it teaches personal responsibility, so that we as citizens don't need the government interfering in our lives.
Now for the nationalist question. Some organizations believe nuclear power is the best option for our future, while others believe the risks outweigh the rewards. What is your opinion on the viability of nuclear power in Kansas, and how do you plan to mitigate the risks?
So this is a great question. I actually plan on going into nuclear engineering, so I know a lot about this. Nuclear energy is completely safe. The only byproducts we have are a few depleted rods. But the thing is, it takes over decades for them to deplete, and then they're stored in another state where they decay within 1,000 years. Nuclear energy is the next future. Other types of renewables, such as solar, wind, and even hydroelectric, are not feasible during all times of the year just because the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine, and rivers don't always flow. Because of this, we need nuclear energy. We've seen with the Wolf Creek reactor that nuclear energy is very, very feasible within Kansas. We can only expect this to grow because, as we see, fossil fuels will start to be fused out basically within the future. We see that fossil fuels create an unhealthy relationship with the Middle East. And over the past few years, we've had bad wars with these countries for no other reason except for greed. We can resolve it with nuclear energy and basically provide for our posterity, and ensure that we do not have an unstable and environmentally infeasible methods of providing for ourselves. Thank you.
So we love nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is great. It's a great way to provide good energy in the future. But for right now, what we need to stick with is oil and gas. Nuclear energy plants, they take like 25 years to build. 15 of that is just getting federal approval. What we need right now is to focus on oil and gas while we develop alternative energy sources, including nuclear energy, as well as research into nuclear fusion in addition to fission, so that we can have even cleaner, even more energy-producing sources for the future.
So he just brought up a very important point. It takes 25 years. But the thing is, if we keep delaying it, we'll never have it. If we wait 25 years from now, then we'll have to wait 25 years from then. The more important thing is, burning oil right now is not an environmentally feasible thing. We're ruining our atmosphere and shitting on our earth.
Test. These next questions are geared to the state treasurer. First, the nationalist candidate. Given that many in the state object to contraception on moral grounds, what is your opinion on having contraception either paid for or subsidized by state money?
So, I believe in women's rights. However, I also believe that everyone deserves life. So I move that we continue the status quo on current abortion laws. We will try to allow abortion before a certain period, before the baby is fully formed. Therefore, we'll be able to protect women who were perhaps sexually abused and raped. And in such a way, we will be able to protect these women. In other cases, such as when the women's life is in danger, we will be able to protect them. In cases such as these, it is right to use government money. We are protecting both life and liberty of these people. And because of this, we should indeed use federal money, or not federal, but state money to fund these projects. And on moral grounds, it may seem that it is against religion. However, it is also against religion to rape and also sexually abuse women. And because of this, if they are raped or sexually abused, they should have the right to, in fact, have contraception and abortion allowed by the government. In conclusion,
So abortion is a very touchy subject now, and I'm all for women's rights as well, just like the Nationalist Party was. But, however, the three things that this country was made on was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yes, we need to allow the women to make their own decisions. However, we've also got to make decisions for those who can't think for themselves yet, those who are still in the womb. And so, other than some cases, extreme cases such as rape, such as incest, such as where the mother's life or the baby's life is in danger, we need to make sure that these babies are allowed to grow, are allowed to live the American dream. We need to make sure that we stand with them, that we support them. As long as it's healthy, as long as everything is going naturally, we need to make sure that we're producing the best Kansans out there, and that is not by taking them out of the picture with state money. And so that's why I don't support what you just said. Thank you.
I believe that women deserve the rights. They too must also get funding from the state for these rights. Because the rape and things like that, according to Federalists, they too agree. So I also agree with them. In such cases as rape or danger to the life, they should indeed have federal money and state money applied to them, and none at all.
This next question is for the Federalist Treasurer candidate. Tourism in Kansas accounts for around 6% of the state's gross income. What will you do to increase the profits from tourism and to bring more tourists to Kansas?
Right now, Kansas is the 49th best tourist state in the nation. We are only in front of North Dakota. And so what we need to do in the state of Kansas, we don't need a Disney World. We don't need any sort of huge theme park. What we need to do is we need to attract the people that are going on short vacations from Nebraska, from Oklahoma, from Colorado. We need to make Kansas a more attractive state for anything such as sports tournaments. We need to make it more attractive through making state parks for all the fishers and the hunters out there. We need to make sure that if you're going on a hunting trip, if you want to hunt pheasants, whatever you're going to do in the outdoors, we need Kansas to be that state. If you're going for a sport, we're going to have the best arenas in place for you. And so in order to get tourism from around the Midwest coming to Kansas, coming to Wichita, coming to Manhattan, Lawrence, Kansas City, wherever you want them to come to, coming to the state of Kansas, that's what we need to do. And so by doing that, we need to start at the Midwestern level because we can't compete with Florida. We can't compete with California at the moment. But by slowly going and by picking up the Midwest, we'll get to that level. And we can be better than 49. We can be first. Thank you.
Right now, Kansas is maybe not as attractive to tourism as many other states. However, Kansas will become even less attractive if we do not invest in renewable energy Fracking in Kansas will leave huge gaping holes that are pollutants and filled with toxins. Do you wish to visit a state that's filled with nothing but pollutants and giant gaping holes from past mining and fracking? If not, then we must invest in renewable energy. We wish to invest in renewable energy sources such as nuclear energy and windmills, and thus protect the environment within Kansas. We can avoid damaging our natural beauty and landscape through the industrials such as fracking and other things. At the same time, we can continue and grow our economy. Thank you.
To touch on the energy issue that was just kind of brought up, there are good ways to frack. The media often paints it as a bad thing, and there are certainly bad ways to frack, but that doesn't mean we can go with the good ways of fracking. And also, renewable energies are going to be a really long-term solution. It's just not viable right now. But let's bring it back to the question at hand. What can we do for tourism? I gave you a few answers that the Midwest needs to come to Kansas, that we can be a better state for tourists, we can be a more enjoyable state for tourists, for outdoorsmen and indoorsmen. So that's what I'm going to do for Kansas.
These next two questions are for the Attorney General candidates, starting with the Federalist Party. Recent incidents around the country have prompted a public demand for body cameras on police officers. What are your thoughts on body cameras and other accountability devices for our officers?
Absolutely. The Federalist Party is absolutely 100% for body cameras on police officers for two main reasons. The two reasons being who it protects. The first, it protects the officers first and foremost, because there's a lot of things that officers are accused of. There are bad officers, but there's a lot that they're just accused of doing bad things and they truly don't. So that it's for their protection, as well as, to my second point, the citizens. There's a lot of bad apples out there in police forces across the country, and citizens have a right to a safety. They should not fear the police. They should see them as the authority figure, and they should see them as the people who are going to keep them in line, but they shouldn't fear police officers. And that's exactly what we need in America. We need somebody who's going to keep you in line, but not somebody who you avoid on purpose, not somebody who you're trying to, somebody you can go up and say hi to on the street. And I think that's the biggest thing in America, is there's been such a massive divide between police officers and the citizens, when in reality, it needs to be a coalition. People need to be working together. And I think that's the biggest thing that the state of Kansas can do with body cameras. The biggest issue with body cameras that the Federalist Party has is simply funding. I was talking to some people in the Senate, and I guess they're working on that. So that's absolutely something that I, as the Attorney General, would love to talk to you guys about, is getting those body cameras on police officers and being able to fund that, so that way we don't go further in debt, but that way we can not only protect our police officers, but we can also protect the great citizens of the state of Kansas.
We in the Nationalist Platform also support body cameras as outlined at my national convention for the reason that it protects the people. And I'd like to remind you that the police is included in these people. The accountability has several advantages of body cams. Not only can people feel safer and feel like they won't be tricked, and there's a better, kind of fosters a closer community in Kansas, it's also economically convincing, as less time is spent in courts arguing, and more justice in the system, as very clear from the body cams what has occurred. Some other things that the Nationalist Party would also like to implement are special commissions to review police officers, specifically which would be removed from the classical prosecutor police bias problem, in addition to the body cams, in order to further promote justice in the Kansas judicial system. Thank you.
Yeah, we absolutely agree with a lot of the things he said, but the biggest thing that you hear from the Nationalist Party is, now we need to make things about, it's the cops' fault. I know there's a lot of the highway patrol out there, and you guys were doing some of that training today, so you kind of got an idea of that, but the biggest thing is, with body cameras, we're not pinpointing it on one person or the other all the time. People do bad things. There's a lot of police officers in this country who want body cameras, so we're going to support that fully, but it's not always the cops' fault, and we need to realize that. With that, thank you.
Kansas has recently changed its concealed carry regulations to allow concealed carry without a license. What are your opinions on concealed carry in Kansas?
I believe that the Second Amendment right, the right to bear arms, is very important, but I do not believe in allowing unlimited usage of weapons. I believe that concealed carry, as it has been passed in the Kansas state law currently, is fine, and I'd like to maintain that status quo, but I would like to continue to have these firearms banned in public places such as schools and and polling stations during elections. Concealed carry is, we've had open carry before in Kansas, but now that concealed carry has been implemented, some people do have the fear that now it'll be more like they won't be able to respond to these kind of things because the weapons are concealed. However, I would argue that what we need to do instead is just put more faith into our judicial system and our community as a whole, and that we don't need to be afraid of citizens having weapons. Bringing it back to, I want to clarify that on the Nationalist Party, we do not blame the cops. In fact, in my speech what I said was that the police are also part of the people, and with concealed carry is we don't need to be afraid of police or citizens with weapons. Instead, we need to come together as a community and recognize these rights and come to a better understanding of each other. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I'm a little confused because in the state of Kansas right now, we have basically almost unlimited gun laws, and he said he doesn't believe in that, but then he turned around and said that he supports Kansas gun laws. Anybody else confused? On that, guys, personally, I love guns. I support Second Amendment all the way. But the big thing is not everyone needs a gun if they've done something stupid. If you've been convicted of murder, you should need to go through a background check. 2 reasons on that. 1, so we keep a lot of these crazy people from getting guns, and 2, so that they can buy those permits. It's also another source of revenue for the state of Kansas. And that's the biggest thing, is we need to continue what's best for Kansas, what's best for Kansas. As the governing body of Kansas, that's our biggest concern. But also, the good people of Kansas need guns, because criminals, by definition, don't follow the law. So good people are going to stop those if they have guns, and that's what the Federalist Party is standing for. Thank you, guys.
Advocate for the moderate approach. We do not support completely banning, allowing citizens to carry weapons, and we do not support allowing unlimited carry of any kind of weapon in the state of Kansas. Instead, we want something that is a good balance between security and liberty in the state of Kansas. Thank you.
These next questions are for the lieutenant governors. The first one will be for the nationalist candidate. In regards to abortion, how would you define human life? And at what point do you believe it begins?
That's a fairly simple question. We believe that life begins at the second trimester. Anything beyond that will not be aborted. That's all I really have to say about that.
I completely agree with this. Our Federalist Party agrees that after the second trimester, we believe that it's life. If you've been raped, if you had all those circumstances, like we believe that should be exempt from you not being allowed to have an abortion, you're probably going to know before your second trimester, and you should probably get that checked. So I believe that you're going to know, and it's up to you to get it done before that. And after that, sorry, but you chose not to. Thank you.
All right, so obviously it's very hard to refute that because there's no premise on the argument, but I want to say that we at the Nationalist Party I gotta speak. I have time everyone, I'm sorry guys, but I want to say we at the Nationalist Party believe that abortions should be safe and readily available for girls under all circumstances. Let's not deny unplanned pregnancies will still happen regardless of whether or not we try to outlaw sex. Therefore, I believe that abortion should be safe and readily available.
Many of Kansas's districts recognize and issue same-sex marriage licenses. How do you think this is changing the social landscape of Kansas?
That's a very big topic right now, is same-sex marriage. Us Federalists believe the separation of church and state. I am open to gay marriage. Even if you're allowed, that doesn't mean you have to follow it. Just because there's gay rights doesn't mean you're gay. I believe that people are allowed to do whatever they want. The government's going to stay out of it. They obviously know a community is going to disagree with that. That's up to the community to decide that. That's up to you guys. It's really not the government, us, to decide that for you. I believe that it's for you guys to vote in your individual counties and cities for that option. If you guys don't believe it, we don't know what you want. You guys know what you want. You guys know what you need. We're just here for you to provide that for you. Thank you.
So my counterpart came up here and said it's not the role of the government to do anything, but right now you guys need to realize that the federal or the state government of Kansas is giving tax breaks to straight couples, and they are failing to give them to gay couples, and right there is unconstitutional. We have one group of people who's getting tax breaks because of their sexual orientation. That is unjust and unconstitutional. We as a government want to separate the church and the state. We don't want to provide anything. We don't want to provide any benefits, based on your sexual orientation. If you want to get a marriage, you get a marriage, and it's up to the government to decide what benefits you will receive from that. But we will not discriminate based on sexual orientation. That is unconstitutional, and by your First Amendment, you were given the right to express your sexuality in any way possible, any way you want, and if marriage is the way you want to do that, I believe that you should be able to do so.
Separation of church and state, that there should be gay rights. Discrimination is wrong. So let's keep that.
Testing. The next 4 questions will be directed towards the governor candidates. And we will be starting with the Federalist Party.
Yeah, boy!
That's minimum wage. Some believe raising the minimum wage could stimulate Kansas's economy, while others believe it would merely drive inflation. What is your stance on the minimum wage, and how do you believe a change would affect Kansas?
Minimum wage is currently a very hot topic among the staters here. I spent 20 minutes talking to the minorities. We're trying to figure out something to agree with here. I want to keep an open mind coming into minimum wage. However, I do agree that minimum wage should not be jacked way up to 15. And I think they realized that that was a mistake too and clearly brought it down to $12.50. Again, I believe $12.50 is still too high. If any of you have a job where you're making minimum wage, currently I work at a golf course. I make about $7 an hour. There's about 6 people on my shift. If minimum wage is doubled or even brought up to $12.50, I've talked to my boss about this. He said he'd fire half of us and make 3 of us do twice as much work. Now, that clearly would not be good for his business because we would offer a worse service to our customers. We don't want to be able to offer less service to our customers. Minimum wage needs to be raised with inflation, and I agree with that, and I'll have an open mind and open discussion with anyone who's willing to ask me about that. However, I don't think it's necessary to bring it up to $12.50. Currently, most people who need minimum wage only need about $3 to $5 more. And so if you only added 50 cents an hour, that would fix that problem. And with the rampant unemployment we have now, we need to focus on getting jobs. Patton County is almost jobless now because they closed a refinery. We need to work with the counties and get jobs back to Kansas.
There's a common misconception about minimum wage, that it means that jobs are just going to go away. The small business owner that might not be able to afford an increase in minimum wage is accounted for with our party. We've already talked about the fact that there is a tax break given to small businesses. Not only that, but those under 15 employees are also exempted from the increases in minimum wage. So one, that wouldn't affect his golf course. The golf course would be fine. Also, in addition to that, Thomas Sowell, who won the 1996 Nobel Prize in Economics, was quoted saying that there is practically no evidence from a large amount of academic studies that indicates that there is any job loss, or that if there is, it is marginal. We've seen repeatedly if states have increased their minimum wage over 90 times in the last 10 years. In over 40 of those cases, unemployment has gone down. In 20 of those cases, unemployment has stayed the same, and only around 13 of those cases, unemployment go up. There is no evidence that indicates there would be more unemployment, and any inflation would be accounted for by the increases in minimum wage. There is no reason not to raise minimum wage. Instead, we are helping a large majority of people by doing so.
Here in Kansas, we're looking to help you guys. We're looking to make you guys be able to live the best life that you can live. And if the minimum wage is something you want, we'll talk about it. But we cannot raise it to $12.50. All of those things you talk about were inflation increases. We do not want to deal with that. And while it's good to spout off a quote, I've talked to actual small business owners, and they all say that they will be forced to cut their employees back. My mother owns a small business. She owns a salon. She has been following this actually very closely, and I apologize.
Next question. In order for the Kansas education system to thrive, we need quality teachers. How would you identify such a teacher, and what standards would you choose to judge them?
All right, our policy for teachers is twofold. The first of which is there needs to be a process through which we evaluate teachers. Now, when tenure was a part of Kansas, they were given tenure and then weren't evaluated later on. The same kind of thing occurs now, where there simply isn't a set of checks and balances on teachers. The way we believe that should be done is instituting a program whereby administrators, teachers, and students would evaluate every teacher through a class that the students were taking. The administrators were over those teachers. Through that, if there's a repeated issue that comes up, as in if you had a teacher that repeatedly had the same problem with various students, couldn't control the classroom, wasn't educating kids for an AP test, then that teacher would be investigated. They're then offered a further education to become more knowledgeable or better educators. That's what a large portion of our increased educational funding is going towards. After that, if they still can't fix the issue, then they are dismissed. The second part of this is the increased education, which we talked about briefly. But increasing it more so, even for teachers who aren't necessarily having problems, increases the quality of teachers within Kansas. If we funnel more money into how well teachers are in fact paid and how well those teachers are educated, furthermore past what they've already been doing, they become better educators. This is the same thing that Denmark, Japan, and various other countries in Europe that have, unfortunately, much better educational systems than we do, have been doing for years now. It's worked there, it would work here too. As long as we educate teachers and make sure only quality teachers are educating students, we'll be a smarter nation.
Evaluation of teachers is important, and I agree with all of the points that he brought up. I agree so much, in fact, that I've been talking with senators and creating a bill that works on the tenure. I don't know if they've worked on this at all yet, but the bill essentially is, after 3 years you get tenure, and you check up on the teacher every 5 years with a big evaluation. And you have sporadic evaluations, like you said, in class. Now, I think that we need to teach our students to the best level that we can. We need to be on par with the fellow states around us, and we need to be a standard that other states set for their education. So enacting that this bill I talked about, I will work together with senators. I will work together with the Department of Education to create a Kansas in which we can create students who companies want to hire, who colleges want to have, who other states look at and wonder how we can have that sense of success. Thank you very much.
No offense to the Federalist Governor candidate Bryce, but I strongly disagree. I don't believe that our educational system should be on par with other states. I don't think that's what we should aspire to. I think we should be higher, okay? I think our educational system should be better than other states, not, let's get up to the level that they're at. No, let's be above them. Let's be better than they are.
Yeah.
We have a specific program to do it. I'm actually one of the people that helped these senators write the tenure bill. Yes, I've been involved. And then also we see that a system, the way we've tried to institute one, improves Kansas education above even other states.
This one for the Federalist. Kansas is currently facing a $600 million deficit. How does this fact affect your plans for establishing your administration and financing your programs?
This deficit is very important to Kansas because we cannot be a state that works under a deficit. Now, we need to make Kansas more efficient. We need to look at all the programs and say what is needed and what is not. And I want to work closely with each and every one of you on the county level to see what programs we need and what programs we do not. Welfare is a program that we need to take a hard look at. It is a great program, do not get me wrong. But we need to make sure that those who are on welfare are working hard to get off of it. We need to make sure that Kansans have jobs. We need to make sure that Kansans are being put to work. We're going to explore many different ways to get out of this deficit, whether it is through alternate bills that raise money for Kansas or anything like that. Now, we also are looking at ways to change the tax system so that we can get the most money, get the most out of the money that you give us. Currently, there's something called the Laffer line, which says that between 30 and 35% is the most efficient tax that we can tax you guys on. And the thing is, we're at 50 now. If we lower that, we can draw in more businesses and create more revenue. Doing so, in creating a more efficient Kansas, we can bring this deficit down and hopefully balance our budget so that we will no longer be in deficit spending. Thank you very much.
We'll begin by talking about welfare. What he's saying is that there are some people that are on welfare that just aren't trying to get off, which is largely untrue. There aren't really people sitting at home like, oh, thank goodness I've got this welfare check. I don't have to go find work now. That's not the way that works. In addition to that, cases where we actually investigate people for welfare fraud, programs that have been attempted to actually occur in states like Missouri. They spent over $350,000 trying to do it, examined over 38,000 people. They found 34 cases of welfare fraud. That's the total number for $350,000 that was spent. In addition to that, we have programs that we are trying to institute as a party where we give tax credits to small businesses, where we increase sales tax and maintain our income tax the same so that we can get out of this deficit, increasing a gas tax for our state and then also a sin tax, all bringing more money by no longer disproportionately affecting the bottom rungs of society and instead only taxing those people that actually can deal with the tax, and then also bringing in more money to Kansas through other methods than just saying, let's cut welfare.
I certainly think it's interesting that you'd like to increase the gas tax on a county that already had taxes increase so much that they had to close down their refinery. Now they have no more jobs It's great that they spend $350,000 on welfare, but he never said how many people they searched. If you know anyone on welfare, you know that there are people who work hard to try to get off of it. But you also do know that there are people who just sit around and don't want to work because they're given money from the government. We want to hand up, not a handout.
Back to a subject that was touched on briefly earlier. Fracking can increase profits for local oil and gas companies, but this benefit may come at a cost of environmental damages. What are your views on this subject?
Absolutely. As was mentioned earlier, there might be safer methods to do fracking. I don't really know what those are. He didn't really clarify what they were. The purpose of fracking is you drill into the ground and then pump a mixture of chemicals into the ground so that you can get what you want out of it. Usually it's natural gas. Now, we've seen that there are huge environmental deficits that occur directly after when fracking occurs. Largely, there are, of course, large holes in the ground. But that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is we're basically pouring chemicals into the earth and then getting oil out of the earth and leaving a giant hole. This isn't exactly great for, one, the environment or how it looks, but also for the ecological health of any region where there is fracking. We've also seen increased rates of earthquakes that have occurred because of fracking in regions, especially southern Kansas and northern Oklahoma. This is something we've seen in just about every region that's done fracking, and it's why it's become less popular in areas that are more populated, simply because people don't really like earthquakes. Also, we see that because fracking has become so popular, it's something that a lot of people like to support. It isn't necessarily something that Kansas needs. Instead, we advocate for alternative energy sources, things like wind energy that can account for the loss in fracking energy that we actually have, and then also taking away the subsidies we currently give to fracking, and instead giving those to alternative energy sources so that those can be developed furthermore. Now, although they've said that the technology simply doesn't exist now, we see that's not true. 19% of all of Kansas energy currently comes from wind energy. And according to an article from the Casey Star earlier this year, that could go up to 40% within the next 5 years. It's absolutely possible. We just have to start doing it and attempt to use clean energy instead of polluting the earth even more so and polluting our state.
We're the Federalist Party. know that we cannot be drilling for oil indefinitely. We know that we must move on eventually to alternative ways to get energy. Now, the thing is with fracking, 97% of it is already not cost effective. So making a platform around reducing fracking is not really a good idea because eventually it will not be around because of how not cost effective it is. We would like to support alternative energy as well. We support wind farms and we support solar panels, but we have to maintain that we need oil now so that when we're ready to switch over to alternative energy, we have energy in the present moment. So I just ask you to think, what are we going to do now? Thank you very much.
I believe there's some confusion as to where the oil in Kansas comes from, and the majority of the time it is not fracking. In fact, fracking will usually yield you natural gas or shale oil in some regions. We don't actually use Kansas fracking for oil the majority of the time. Also, there's a clarification for the gas tax that was mentioned earlier. That goes on to the gas that you would buy at the pump, not actually the oil industry itself. That is a totally separate oil or gas tax, not the one that we are actually advocating for. In addition to that, fracking is unhealthy for the environment. It's not necessary to maintain what we do in terms of energy needs, and we can absolutely make Kansas cleaner.
That concludes our 2015 Kansas Boys State Debate. Please join me in a round of applause for our candidates.